back to the Professional Lovers channel. I'm Al.
And I'm Patty. And we are the Professional
Lovers.
Lovers. Here again with another recap for this week's Married at First Sight. And a couple of interesting things to talk about.
Real life situations.
Real life situations. If you're new to our channel and you like what you hear, then feel free to like it, subscribe to us, and share us with other people who have an affinity for Married at First Sight and learning how to build strong relationships, because that's kind of what we talk about through the lens of Married at First Sight and through the lens of our own experience, as we were both 30-somethings when we met and got married.
Yeah.
So we fit the profile of the couples that end up on Married at First Sight.
It was arranged.
It sort of was arranged. And, you know, but I did meet him before the altar. And that was a good thing.
A day or two.
So, more than that. Anyway, so we can relate to a lot of what these couples are going through. Yet, we did it in the traditional sense, in the traditional way, which is what we would still recommend for
anybody else.
Right. But with that being said, let's get on into
the couples.
Starting with Jasmine and Iris. So I always like to set up kind of what happened, and for the most part, the experts sent them questions to ask each other in order to deepen their exploration of each other's
background and
right,
history
and who they are and what they think about. So that's kind of the foundation for this week's show. So Jasmine and Iris, well, it started out with Iris having COVID.
Yeah. And
so there wasn't too much there. He was sick, but he rated Jasmine's nursing him a 7. And I was kind of like, what is that? I mean, you have COVID.
Yeah.
She don't want to get COVID. So what would have made a 10? That she was around you 24/7 and
I don't know
and got
else.
COVID too?
I mean,
I don't know. But I thought that was interesting that he rated her a 7.
She catered to you.
Yeah, you know. But anyway, with their questions, some of the questions that they asked each other, you know, well, Iris asked Jasmine, had she ever been, or how many times she'd been in love. And she said 3.
Well, he jumped out there and said, what, 5?
Yeah.
And
she said 3.
Kind of caught off guard with that one, but she said 3.
And then he asked, does love scare you? And she said, yes, but because she's a hopeless romantic, she doesn't allow it to scare her to the point of having no hope for finding it.
And in reality, I mean, I think falling in love is, excuse the term, falling in love.
Yeah, which we don't generally like.
Exactly.
Growing into love.
But being in love or anticipating being in love, it can be a scary thing, because you are bearing yourself. I mean, you're becoming very raw and vulnerable and allowing someone in to the point of being placed in a very painful situation if things are not reciprocated.
Yeah, I mean, being vulnerable means that you're opening yourself up to being hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's with each relationship. So you have to do that if you're planning on finding love.
Which I don't believe he's willing to do yet, which is he divulged some things about his past relationships, and him being 39, it's been 11 years since he was even what he considered close to being in love. And
that explains a lot about him.
Yeah.
That he admitted he
don't let nobody
was
get
almost
close.
in love, and when he opened himself up, he got hurt.
Right.
And because he said that the male ego is small and fragile. I mean, would you agree with that?
It is.
Is it more fragile than a female's ego?
Oh, yeah.
And why would you say that?
Because it's bigger. He said it was small, but it's small in reality, but it plays such a large role in, I think, the average man, because, you know, we have to...
Is that society's...
yeah, society has a lot to play in that.
With that machismo kind of thing.
Yeah.
You heard it from the man.
It's valid, you know.
Well, because his ego was small and fragile and got hurt, he closed himself off, and that's why he always seems to be emotionless.
Yeah.
When he's dealing with Jasmine.
And it's easy to be emotionless if you're not putting anything into it.
Yeah.
So
now the other deep conversation they had, which kind of ticked me off, was about sex. And what ticked me off is that they were playing the game. Have I ever? Have you ever? Have I never? Whatever the name of that game is.
Never have I ever.
Right. Never have I ever. And everything that he asked about, which was, you know, typical sex for entertainment, recreation, not putting any kind of a value on sexual activity for connection or emotional connection.
No intimacy.
And intimacy. She had never done. She never had a threesome. He confessed to having participated in orgies.
Plural.
She never cheated on anyone. She never kissed a woman. Like, had he kissed a guy? I mean, really. So, and his characterization of her was that she was boring.
Yes.
And I'm like,
I mean, that's disrespectful, really.
It really was. And that ticked me off. Because you're equating, you know, his thing was, you're supposed to get all that out your system before you get married. It was never in her system. And why did it have to be?
Yeah.
And that's
why was it in yours?
That's a key element when two older people are coming together. You know, is sex supposed to... Is your sexual activity supposed to match? I mean...
Yeah, well, actually, it was a scorecard to him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's something to experience and knowledge and, you know, understandable. But the way he was looking at it and presenting it, it was... Like
something was wrong with her because she'd never cheated on somebody.
Yeah, that's
or something was wrong with her because she had never participated in threesomes. And that's what ticked me off. Who is anybody to pass judgment on your sexual activity? If you don't want me to call you a pervert, don't call me boring. I'm just saying. So anyway, so that really kind of ticked me off, as you can tell. I feel very strongly about how society wants to characterize people who don't engage in, you know, the types of sexual activity that society thinks is normal. And then, you know, make you feel shamed. Shame you about it. You know. So anyway, that was that. And on the after party, she was like, you know, that didn't bother me. What he had participated in didn't bother him, didn't bother her. But, you know, I think being labeled as, you know, boring because
that irritated
that wasn't her experience. It did irritate her. Yeah. So, all right, Gina and Clint. Well, Clint talked to his mom, who I think was an entrepreneur. Business owner. And was kind of, you know, getting her take on the amount of time that it takes for
a business to get moving and allowing it to be self-sufficient, giving the owner, you know, a certain freedom, you know, and applying the trust of others to run the business for them, you know. So it took time.
And she kind of confirmed you know, why Gina is spending or has been spending so much time in getting her brick and mortar salon up and running. And so, you know, I think hearing that from his mom kind of gave him a little pause.
Pump his brakes.
Yeah, about, you know, the amount of time that Gina talks about and or spends at the salon. And he visited the salon, which I thought was nice. Yeah. He went to see what it was like, to meet her staff.
He entertained the girls.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the one thing that one of his girls thought that he was going to be like dirty or something?
Yeah, something like that. Oh, because she asked if he was messy. And he was like, no. Yeah,
because he had the booty joke with the hair shower spray hose or whatever. Yeah, so, you know, that was nice.
Now, in their questioning, you were going to say something else?
No, go ahead. Continue.
So in their questioning, one question was, you know, what brings you joy? And she said, spending quality time with people she loves, traveling, and decompressing. Keep that in mind.
Yes.
And he said the 3 F's. Do you remember what they were?
Was it friends, family, and food?
Very good. Yeah. Friends, family, and food. And then, you know, what scares him about, you know, love and being transparent. And Gina said, you know, that she wonders if their emotional connection will continue to grow. And he kind of seconded that fear. They went out and had a good time at a what do you call it? Bull riding
convention or
event.
Yeah, event.
And you know, they were very country. But the
Clint could do it.
Yeah.
So he thinks. I can do it.
Oh, and one more thing with the questions. Talk about a difficult period in your life when and how you overcame that, and she talked about her childhood. And he talked about getting somebody pregnant,
potentially becoming a father, and his commitment to it. And you know, unfortunately, the woman had a miscarriage. But he was, from the time he found out, he was all about it, regardless of what
their relationship
was going to be.
Right.
You know, he was going to be there. He was going to provide. And I'm sure that, you know, that gave Gina hope, you know, in further understanding him, you know, and I think that's Clint. I mean, he's
not particularly tender and gentle, but he's got a good head on his shoulders.
I think he's real. I think he's pretty genuine.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little rough on the edges. I mean, you know, it's the difference between, well, I won't even use the analogy, but there's a difference between being gentle and being other, you know. And sometimes he can be coarse.
Yeah. Yeah. But the fact that not only was he committed to the idea of being a father, but when she miscarried, he really experienced that emotion and loss physically. He talked about, you know, a full body rash, and which was stress and, you know, just the emotion behind the loss. So that showed another side of him. And then he took her sailing.
Yeah.
And that's why we said keep that word decompressing, because that's a great way to decompress. And I think she really got a sense of, first of all, why he loves it so much.
Yeah. Because he's done it all his life.
I mean, he grew up in that.
Right. From infancy.
Yeah. And I was saying that, you know, he talked about how his mom was a sailing instructor or something. And I was like, that reminded me of Al's mom in bowling. I mean, that's what she did. I mean, she was an athlete anyway. And so you grew up in an athletic environment where, you know, so it was nice for her to experience something that he loves that she could also love, because it would serve as a decompressor.
One of her, what were the 3 things?
Decompressing.
No, yeah, I know, but
quality time with a loved one.
Right. What do we call the categories? What are those 3 things?
Oh, what brings her joy?
Joy. joy.
Something that brings her joy.
Yeah.
And that's something that he loves, and she could end up loving too. And at the end of their little date, puts arms around each other.
They walked off.
And that was significant because they had not done any physical touch.
No touching, no holding hands.
Nothing.
I mean, well, they did hold hands when they were talking about the questions.
Yeah.
That was a criteria in answering the questions. While answering the
but
questions.
But it was a criteria.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was kind of a forced situation.
Yeah.
But it was kind of interesting where Gina asked, well, do you hold your hand? Do you hold it like you're holding a bar, or do you waffle it?
Waffle it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was cute. All right, Nicole and Chris. So Nicole put together a little spa date for the two of them, and as they're talking back and forth, Chris was saying, you know, we're both our love language is physical touch, and she was like, actually,
it may be now, but it wasn't.
Not really. She said that physical touch was like her bottom of the totem pole. Like she didn't like it.
Yeah.
Until she met Chris.
She was in relationships that, you know, I don't know. I guess there was definitely something missing, and the physical touch didn't make it any better.
Yeah. So, and that's interesting because I wonder if, and I've seen other couples, you know, talk about their love languages, and yours is physical touch and words of affirmation. And I wonder if that's kind of a typical guy thing. Mine are acts of service and gifts. Yeah. But
I mean, well, yeah, guys, whether we tend to express it or not, I mean, we're physical beings anyway. I mean, you know, we're the hunters, we're the gatherers, we're the athletes, and, you know, we're the fixers and all of that. But then, you know, I guess we do want a sensitive side as well, you know. So, you know, that's why we love women the way we do.
Maybe that's the sensitive side, especially for guys who don't necessarily show a sensitive side.
True.
Is that the physical touch is part of the sensitive side. I don't know. Just wondering.
Yeah, possibly.
But, you know, apparently he's rubbing off on her. As you have kind of rubbed off on me. Although that's still not my love language. But it definitely has increased that, because if you're loving your spouse or your partner the way they want to be loved and they need to be loved, then that's going to naturally increase. Exactly. So, then they had the typical, there's always one couple each season where the wife is wondering about, I love you. The I love you phrase. Who's going to say it first, and when are you going to say it? And so they kind of had that conversation, and every season we're like, why is that so necessary this early?
Yeah.
Because you can tell how someone is growing in their feelings for you by their behavior.
Actions. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's, oh man, and I had a lot to say about words and how even hearing the word, not necessarily saying it in that phrase, but you can, you know, and again, I have this thing about the styles of communication between the couples, because just the words, I think, would just ease some of the tension that all of them are dealing with. And in this case, where she wants to hear, I love you. Okay, I'm not ready to say I love you, but I do love the growth that we are experiencing together. And I can imagine that can appease the need,
the angst.
Yeah. You know, okay, you want to hear that word. I mean, and not to say that you're just doing it just so you can hear it, but reference it in another way as opposed to saying it. If you don't feel comfortable saying it that way, I love you, then indicates something about what you're going through that you do love.
Yeah.
Or that makes you feel that love has a true potential in your future, or, you know, and that's what I think a lot of the couples that are still remaining have in being able to express to one another in a manner that just makes the other feel that you're there.
It also makes the other feel that what they're doing is worth it.
Yeah.
But the reality is the I love you phrase creates a lot of pressure.
It does. It does.
And can you just enjoy where you are and how you're growing without adding that pressure to what is already a pressurized situation?
Totally. From day one.
Yeah. So, and then the last thing, Chris, who cut his hair because he's very concerned about making sure that he feels
looks good for his woman.
Right. That attractiveness is important in a marriage, which it is. You know, when people get married, they tend to let stuff go. Because, you know, it's kind of like, I got him,
you now.
I got her, so I don't have to do all that, you know. And to some degree, depending on what you were doing beforehand, you know, you may not do all that.
Well, no, you just have spending more time. It's the in-between time and phases that you see the downtime or the naturalness or the less groomed or the more comfort, you know, scene that you're involved in. So it's not just, you know, that they let things go. I don't.
Sometimes they let things go. And you know, and sometimes it's because of the different stages you go through. When you become a parent, you may not have as much time, whatever the case may be. But you need to, at some point, remind each other why you all chose each other, you know, when it comes to, because how you look was part of that package.
True.
You know.
True.
So anyway, but that led to a discussion about he confessed because he didn't want her to find out any other way, which was commendable.
Yeah.
That on camera he was asked a question on the honeymoon.
How do you like, you know, the physicalness of, you know, your wife?
Yes.
And he said she's beautiful, face is beautiful.
Beautiful smile, beautiful eye. I asked for smile, eyes, a little,
just a little
thicker,
more thick than I usually choose.
And of course, that was
like,
yeah, that was it flipped her head.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And because, I mean, and she said she struggled with dysmorphia, and she, you know, understood what he was saying, because he did say that's not a bad thing. But if a person struggles with body image, then that's all they hear is thick. Yeah. And for them, it is a bad thing, because for them, that description is negative. And so she was like, you know, well, next time, if somebody asks you to describe your wife, you can say, I'm strong, I'm sexy. Just don't use the word thick.
Because it's not like the old 80s phrase of fat. Ooh, she's fat. P-H-A-T. Pretty hot and tempting. Yeah, that is some of y'all like, yeah, see, look at that. You don't even know.
I didn't know.
Yeah, but they don't use that phrase anymore.
No.
You know, not unless we think of something different for T-H-I-C-K.
Well, no, now, you know, to describe bigger girls, they do use thick, or they use curvy. Or, you know, other euphemisms to describe a person who's not 36, 24, 36. But yeah, who has some substance to them. Yeah. Kirsten and Shaq. So, I say Kirsten. I did all the time, don't I?
Because she ain't reacting right yet.
Kirsten and Shaq. All right. She's having problems, and she talked to a friend. She's having problems with the amount of time that he's spending at work. Now, he works with students as a mentor. He does other things. He's, you know, he's hosting stuff late at night, and she's in bed when he comes home, and you know, and she's feeling like they're not really making time. He's not making time for them to spend together, which is necessary in this situation
True.
for them to really get to know each other.
One way or another, finding out,
Yeah, and so that's, you know, she was talking to her friend about that, and apparently they've talked about it because he asked her to be patient and all that.
But and it's not something that you normally do, but he decided in an effort to
spend
allow
time
her to see some of what he does, he invited work home.
Right.
You know, and brought a handful of his guys that he mentors to the house.
And I think she was excited about that.
Yeah, she was.
She enjoyed that because she could ask them questions about him to understand how he is at work and whatever. And in conversation, one of the mentees asked, so what have you sacrificed, you know, as part of doing this experiment? And he revealed that he had gotten a job offer. Yeah, that he'd gotten a job offer in another location, another state or whatever.
So far away.
And he turned it down. In the after party, we discovered exactly what I was thinking, which was, why didn't he still discuss that with her? You're married. And this is one issue that I kept seeing through this whole discussion between Kirsten and Shaq. It's not unusual for older people who get married, who have spent a long time single, to have a hard time flipping their brain to thinking as a married person.
Yeah.
And what happens is the togetherness, you know, because he talked about before the mentees, you know, I need my time. I need to go to the gym. I need to spend time with my guy friends going out, and I need to do this. And it becomes this issue of what I call default togetherness. Because we live together in the same place, because we sleep together in the same bed, we're automatically going to see each other in the morning. We're automatically going to see each other at night. We're automatically going to be in each other's company. But that's default togetherness.
Yeah, that's not quality time.
That's not intentional togetherness.
Right. True.
Right.
True.
And we talk about that, bringing out the book, Becoming a Professional Lover. And I think we've mentioned this before.
Episodes before. Yeah.
Togetherness in work and play will keep you bonded.
True.
And it talks about, you know, how couples have varying ideas of what togetherness means. And it says, some may wonder, do we have to spend every non-working moment together? Is it wrong to socialize or take trips or relax without your spouse? And the answer is not really, unless that becomes the dominant way that you operate. And if being alone is the dominant or preferred way,
that's a problem.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
But in this case, I believe that Shaq is making decisions in some cases because he's not getting the feedback that he needs to not have to share and, you know, be enlightened by his sounding boards that he's accustomed to. Because in his attempting to share with Kirsten
during their spa night that she put together,
right,
which is great.
It was awesome. It was an awesome idea that took a left turn hard. Because
she asked a question of him, tell me something about yourself that I don't know. And he, in a vulnerable gesture, talked about his insecurities.
Yeah.
Then he asked her, tell me something about you that I don't know.
And she started off saying, well, you know, there's a ton of things that
No, first you said, I can close myself off and get quiet. And he was like, well, I already know about that.
No, tell me something I don't know.
There are a ton of things that you don't know. Okay, well.
I can sound like a cricket.
And then.
Because she said nothing.
And I could sense and I could understand his frustration.
Yeah.
Because she has kept talking about him being vulnerable with her, and she refuses to be vulnerable with him. Now, if you watch the after party, and this came up, and Keisha Knight Pulliam asked her, why is it so difficult for you to open up and share? And she started crying.
And this is something that I didn't express it verbally, but I have seen it. Especially, well, again, being a male, I notice it in women. There are a ton of gorgeous women out here who are filled with insecurities because it's assumed by the rest of the world that their world is perfect, off the chain. Everything is fine. And, you know, just because they happen to look good. And
they can get whoever they want to get.
Oh,
they
yeah,
can pull
they get all the attention.
Exactly.
And I just thought of her being a pretty girl with a lot of insecurities. And it's mainly because of the pressure that she has placed on herself, being the role model for her younger siblings and being the perfect child for her parents. And, you know,
which came out during the after party discussion.
Yeah, well, no, she's talked a little bit about that in, you know, her upbringing, like how she grew up. But again, that generates a lot of pressure if you don't have an outlet, you don't express it, you don't, you know, have your time where you can be, you know.
Yeah, but in her mind, but in her mind, if she can't be imperfect, then there's never a time for that, which means you're constantly going to be buttoned up and bottled up because you're expecting yourself to be perfect.
Yeah.
And you're not. And that's okay.
And you know that you're not, but you can't let anybody else know.
Yeah, so when he said, you know, your walls are so high, and I have no idea how to get over them. And she, on the after party, she was like, you know, there's a way to get me to open up. And I was like, wait a minute. Okay. Is he supposed to play 20 questions and try this to fail at it, to try this to fail? Tell him. Tell him how to get you to open up. And we're going over time, but we've had this same kind of issue.
But I think between the two of them, he asked a question. She was starting to slowly talk, and he interrupted her. And I believe that he is going to have to be exceptionally patient with her and allow her to open up her shell in her time.
Well,
but I mean, not to
we'll
just
see how
back
much
up.
patience he has.
But he has to understand he has a role to play in that.
He does.
He has a role to play in allowing her to be vulnerable.
He does. But folks, you cannot assume that the others should be able to figure out how to get from you
what I'm thinking,
what you want them to get from you. That's where communication comes into play. And being able to verbalize what they need to do to give you what you want.
You can't hear the words rolling around in my head.
So, anyway, we'll see how all of this plays out next week. Red flag couple?
Oh, Iris. he red flag for both of them.
And I think my red flag couple is Shaq and Kirsten. Because of her inability, or unwillingness, I should say, to make herself vulnerable.
I don't think it's intentional. I just don't think.
But it's still a red flag.
I think it's a weak muscle that she has to find a way to exercise.
Couple of the week? I'm saying Gina and Clint. Just because
there's the way they walked away.
There's been progress.
Yeah.
There's been progress.
Yeah. And both of them were very comfortable in this episode, and they shared time with one another, and were in environments that no craziness, and it was just pleasant.
So, before we leave you though, we're going to add something a little new, thanks to your suggestion, Tomlin. And we're going to leave you with a question. And whatever opinion you have, whatever response you have, we're interested in seeing it. But here's the question. Should Clint and Kirsten be concerned about the challenge of work-life balance that seems to plague their spouses?
At present.
At this time.
At present.
Yes.
Yeah.
Should that be a concern, or do you think it really is not that big of a deal? Let us know how you feel. You've heard our discussion. Let us know how you feel. And until next week, we want you to love yourselves
and each other.
Bye.